welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into the sweeping, truly epic history of the most popular sport on the planet. We're talking about the story of FIFA, the Fédération Internationale de Football Association. And this isn't just some dry timeline of rule changes. It's a cinematic journey through well over a century of human passion, massive technological leaps, and some incredibly intense global politics.
To really set the scene, picture this. Imagine the gritty, vintage origins of the beautiful game. A dark, dusty pitch, dramatically lit with dust particles kind of just floating in the air. A heavy, mud-stained leather football with those thick, cumbersome laces rolls across the grass. This is the era long before the massive stadiums, way before the global broadcasts, and definitely before the billion-dollar sponsorships. This is where the story truly begins.
Section 1. The Birth in Paris.
So, back in the historic, smoky street scenes of 1900s Europe, football was growing like wildfire. But international matches? They were pretty chaotic without a unifying set of rules. In 1904, FIFA was officially founded in Paris, with this grand vision to unite the sport across nations. And things moved incredibly fast. Just 1 year later, in 1905, the English Football Association, who were actually pretty skeptical at first, joined the ranks. By 1909, the organization expanded beyond Europe for the very first time when South Africa joined up, followed shortly by Argentina, Chile, the US, and Canada. And of course, by 1930, they were hosting the very first World Cup. It's an absolutely rapid transition from a small regional treaty to a genuinely global footprint.
Think about being in the room where it all started. The authentic primary source documents from the very first meeting on May 21, 1904 still exist. It went down at the headquarters of the French Athletic Union at 229 Rue Saint-Honoré in Paris. When you think about that faded typewriter ink, you can practically feel the history as delegates from France, Belgium, Denmark, the Netherlands, Spain, Sweden, and Switzerland sat down to formalize the beautiful game. It's honestly wild to think about the contrast between the multi-billion-dollar organization we know today and its incredibly modest start, founded by just 7 European nations. In fact, the British home nations initially completely rejected the whole idea, led by a very firm no from Football Association President Lord Kinnaird. And my absolute favorite detail from the historical records, the original annual membership fee for a nation to join FIFA was set at a mere 50 French francs. The original documents also show that it was unanimous. Robert Guérin of France was elected as the very first president of FIFA, taking on the massive job of steering this new ship through its most fragile early years.
Section 2. The First World Cup.
By the late 1920s, after they had successfully organized Olympic football tournaments that drew absolutely massive crowds, FIFA was ready to launch its own standalone World Championship. This was a monumental shift. What started as a tiny governing body, essentially acting as a rule keeper, transformed into the architect of a global spectacle. The year was 1930. The host was Uruguay, chosen specifically to coincide with the 100th anniversary of their independence. A tournament like this required a stage completely worthy of its ambition, which led to the creation of the Estadio Centenario. Listen to this powerful quote from the third FIFA president Jules Rimet when he saw the venue. "I have never seen anything as complete as this. There are bigger stadiums in the world, but they are used to host all sorts of sports. I don't think it's an exaggeration for me to say it is a world first, as it has been built solely for football."
The sheer scale of this endeavor was staggering for the 1930s. This stadium was built in just 5 months by 1,100 laborers. They were working around the clock in 3 shifts, fighting through heavy rains just to get it finished in time. And the architecture itself is deeply symbolic. It features the Torre de los Homenajes, a tower shaped like a ship's rudder to honor the immigrants who traveled to Uruguay, with 9 balconies representing the stripes of their national flag. Fast forward to 1983, and FIFA actually declared this stadium its only historical monument of world football.
Section 3. Post-war global boom. Following the absolute devastation of World War II, international football had obviously been on pause. But as the world began to rebuild, the appetite for the sport didn't just return, it exploded. Consider this staggering number: 135,000. That is the number of spectators who packed into Hampden Park in Glasgow in 1947 for what was dubbed the match of the century between Great Britain and a rest of Europe team. The proceeds of this match, which Britain won 6-1 by the way, were given directly to FIFA to help relaunch the organization after the war. That massive crowd perfectly showcased the intense post-war hunger for football.
And you know, the way fans consumed the game was evolving just as rapidly as the crowds were growing. While the very first sports radio broadcasts began in the 1920s, it was the advent of color television in the 1960s that truly brought the vibrant, emotional reality of World Cup matches right into living rooms worldwide. Recognizing this massive visual shift, by the 1970 World Cup in Mexico, FIFA introduced the first unified official tournament logo. That was a major step toward becoming the heavily branded global media behemoth we recognize today.
Section 4: Modern Growth and Controversies.
Now, as FIFA's influence and financial power reached unprecedented global heights in the late 20th and early 21st centuries, it naturally faced intense scrutiny regarding its regulations. One really fascinating example of this geographical and political challenge is the 2007 altitude ban. So, FIFA ruled that international matches could not be played at extreme altitudes over 2,500 meters, citing health and fairness concerns. Well, this immediately impacted Andean nations. Cities like La Paz, Quito, and Bogotá were suddenly disqualified from hosting. What followed was a fierce political tug-of-war. Facing heavy condemnation and pressure from South America's CONMEBOL, FIFA first raised the limit to 2,800 meters and eventually just waived the restriction for La Paz entirely.
The scrutiny absolutely reached a fever pitch regarding the selection process for the 2022 World Cup. The source documents detail a severe, highly publicized debate. On one side, you had serious whistleblower allegations and testimony brought before a UK Parliamentary Inquiry Board, claiming that several FIFA Executive Committee members demanded multi-million-dollar payouts and favors in exchange for their votes. But on the flip side, the accused executives issued strict, total denials of all bribery claims. This entire clash resulted in intense internal investigations and a period of deep organizational turbulence.
We also see conflicts arise between international regulations and deeply held national traditions. Take the 2016 poppy dispute. FIFA enforced a ban on British home nations wearing Remembrance Day poppy armbands during matches, basically classifying them as unauthorized political symbols under their uniform rules. Well, the home nations defied the ban, employing alternative tributes like wreaths and fan placards, which ultimately resulted in official disciplinary fines from FIFA. It's a very clear illustration of the incredibly complex balancing act between keeping a unified global rulebook and respecting local cultural identities.
Section 5: A Century of Football.
Bringing our narrative full circle, it's worth zooming out to look at the massive, unparalleled empire FIFA has become today. 211. That is the number of current member nations affiliated with FIFA right now. When you contrast that with the 7 representatives sitting around a single desk on Rue Saint-Honoré in 1904, the sheer scale of expansion is absolutely breathtaking. It is now literally one of the world's oldest and largest non-governmental organizations.
From just a handful of European nations, FIFA transformed football into a worldwide passion. Today, we exist in a modern, hyper-connected reality. We've got sweeping drone shots of massive, billion-dollar stadiums, advanced technology like VAR screens dictating millimeter-perfect decisions, and a truly unified global audience where billions of people across every single continent tune in simultaneously to watch the exact same patch of grass.
We've seen the mud-stained leather balls of the 1900s evolve into the hyper-engineered global spectacles of today. So, with 211 member nations and a complex legacy defined by both breathtaking athletic triumphs and immense organizational controversies, what will FIFA's next century look like? How will the beautiful game continue to evolve from here? It's a fascinating history, and one that is quite literally still being written every single time a referee blows the whistle. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer.